Hello everyone. In this video we'll talk about Laravel folder structure. In our previous video we saw how can we install a Laravel project. I open one of the project here. You can see here is the Laravel default files and folders here. We will go through all and explain what folder does what. But remember that as a beginner, you don't need to know everything about the folder and file structure. If you only know the most commonly used files and folders right now, that will be enough for you. Like where you will put your HTML code, models, controllers, where you will register your routes, config, database. If you know these files at the beginner level, it's totally fine. You can work with Laravel easily. Let's start with app folder. If I open it, you can see here is some files called console, exceptions, HTTP, models, providers. Let's open one. Let's say I open the first one, console. Here is a file called kernel.php. Basically, what kernel.php does, if we need any kind of new comments, you can say custom comments or manual comments, we can create it here. So if you know that Laravel, in Laravel we use lots of commands, artisan commands for creating view, controllers, models, migrations and other stuff. So if we need any kind of new commands, we can create it here. And here is a exception folder, is a handler. Basically we don't need a console and exceptions because at the beginning we can talk about HTTP. In HTTP, you can see we have controllers, middlewares. What controllers is? Basically, a controller is that which control the behavior of a request. It handles the request coming from the routes and return the views. And let's talk about middleware. Middleware is basically a request filter. It's work like a filter. You can see here is a authentication, encryption, and other stuff. Now don't get confused by them. We will talk about this controller, middleware and other stuff later in the videos, so no need to worry. Now let's discuss about kernel.php. Basically all the middleware will register here. If you can see, here is the old middlewares, that default middlewares. If we create any kind of new middleware, that have to be registered in this file. Now let's collapse them. Now we will talk about models. What are the models in Laravel? Models are responsible for retrieving your datas and communicating with your database. If you can see, here is a user.php. That means that model will interact with users tables and collect data or object from it. We'll talk them about later. We have providers. Basically, as a beginner, we don't work with providers. All the service providers will go in this folder if we create any new one. You can see here is some providers like route provider, route service provider, event service providers, and so on. Now let's talk about bootstrap folder. In here you can see here is a file called app.php. Basically we don't do anything here, and that file is responsible for bootstrapping our software. And in here you can see here is a cache folder. Basically for optimizing reason, Laravel generates some cache, so all the cache file automatically goes here by default. Let's talk about config folder. If I open it, you can see some files. This is one of the important files for beginners. You can configure everything here like database, email, sessions and views, everything. So if you need to configure anything in your application, you can come here and configure it, like file systems. If you want to set any kind of default file system, you can set it from here. Now let's talk about database folder. If I open it, you can see here is 3 files: factories, migrations, seeders. Basically what seeder is basically create fake data for your database table. And here is migrations. Migration is most essential feature of Laravel, you can say, that allows you to create a table in your database. It allows you to modify and share your application's database schema. You can modify the table by adding new columns or deleting existing columns, etc. Now the factories are also kind of similar like seeders. It generates fake data, or you can say put fake data on your database table. Now let's talk about public folder. Yeah, here is another folder called language. This is for the multiple language. This is one of the advanced stuff, so we will talk them later. Now let's talk about public folder. If I open it, you can see here is a one file index.php. Remember that when your application load, the first thing that browser loads is your index.php. Now let's open resources file. In here you can see CSS, JS and views. In CSS, JS we put our public CSS and JS, but the most important file here is views. Remember, all the HTML code will go and place in this views folder. You can see here is a welcome.blade.php. This is the default homepage of Laravel after installing a fresh project. If I open our browser, this page is basically welcome.blade. You can also nest your views here, no issue. But remember that all the HTML code will go in views folder. Let's collapse them. Let's open routes folder. In here you can see some files. All the routes file will go in routes folder. Basically we will working with web for the most time. All our routes will register in this file. Now let's collapse it. Now here is the storage. Storage is basically store all the files. So here is another folder called tests. If we create any kind of test for our application, that will go here. This is also a advanced topic, we'll cover it later. Here is the vendor folder. All the dependencies and composer package will go here, and here is the env file. So we can control any kind of environment variable from here, as like here is database connections and app name and other stuff. Let's talk about composer.json. In here all the composers package and all the dependencies are mentioned here. And here is another file called package.json. If you install any kind of npm package, you can see it is listed here. Basically when you work with any kind of front-end library like React or Vue, this file you will be using this file a lot. And here is artisan file. Basically all the commands we type in command line, the artisan handle it. I think that's it for Laravel structure video. I will see you at the next